Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Continuing with the relationship that Imam Hussain has with his Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we stated that he sees himself without a claim, without a right at the outset of his journey of finding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He comes to this point of understanding that whatever God has destined for him is the best that can be destined. He sees the troubles, the tribulations, the tests are from the one who knows better. He acquires this level of trust with God and understands that the purpose for which he has been created is something known by God, and God is driving him to that end and to that purpose. So therefore, he pleads with Allah and he says, "Oh Allah, allow me not to want the hastening of a decree that you have chosen to delay, nor cause me to want the delay of a destiny that you have chosen to hasten. If this is the test that you have destined for me at this point, then if I were to want you to delay it, it shows my lack of trust in your discretion." It's a wonderful state to be in. And then he says, "Oh Lord, bring the best out for me through this test." I just want to recap on this slightly as we move on to the next stage. Sometimes we are troubled by the tests of time, but Allah has an aim for us to grow through that. Sometimes Allah tests us with poverty, but the one who can trust Allah in poverty has truly arrived at the purpose of life. For knowing that today I do not rely upon my own earnings, nor upon my business, nor upon my ability, but I rely on Allah instead. And that becomes the wealth unending. When Allah tests us with the lack of force, power, friends, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes to bring us to a level of unending strength. When death causes no more fear in our souls, when we become needless of support, when we become needless of armies. Imagine, God has brought us to a pedestal of strength after which there is no weakness. Otherwise you find kings in fortified castles fearing all night long, either at the approach of an enemy or at a blood clot seizing them in the depth of the night. So when Allah tests us, the deeper the test, the greater the test, it means the greater is the substance of that person. We said this previously, that it takes a Nadal to make a Federer. You don't find great men just popping up. Great people become through severe tests. Can we have salawat, please? So Hussain ibn Ali here understands this fully and does not ruin the whole process. If we were to complain to God, then what is happening here is it's a display of displeasure with God's decree, which then is translated as lack of attainment of purpose, because we have already stated that inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, we are returning to Allah. Allah is taking us back to Himself, and we are saying, "Lord, stop. I do not trust you're taking me back." But Allah said, but Hussain is saying, "Oh Lord, you are my king. You are my master. You are my all. If you have created me and made me in such a best way, when I wasn't shay'an madhkura, when I wasn't even worthy of mention, when you have created such beautiful heavens and earth, when you have brought about such beautiful balance, everything is precise. Oh Lord, should I say now that I know better than you when you plan my life out? It is but a day or two that I'm going to live, or a year or two, or 10 years or 20. Eventually I have to come to you." Hussain understands it very differently. He has come to that stage in his life where he does not want to challenge God in the decree of God. Then he arrives beautifully beyond this stage, and the greater the number of challenges Hussain had, the greater he rejoiced. My goodness, what a man he was. The more severe and bitter the tests became, the more godly he became, as we will see today, how he embraces God. Then we came to a stage where not only is there trust, he begins to find a friend in God. Now it is no longer a question, "O Lord, I understand from my mind that you decree the best, that you know the best. But O Lord, I need a friend at that deep level that I can be one with. I need somebody with whom I can share. Even when I accept your decree, there is something in there that is hidden in me, that I do want to say that I have trusted my God, but I feel a little bit resentful. There is something in there that is still hidden from me and hidden from you. It is open to you. It is hidden in me, and I'm not willing to share it with you. O Lord, become a friend of mine with whom I can sit alone, with whom I can talk, with whom I can share so fully that nothing about me is hidden from you, that I am an open book for you." And he says at that point, when he arrives at that point of enlightenment, that, "O Lord, how shall I say anything to you when whatever I'm going to say is apparent to you before I speak it out? O Lord, how shall I complain of any state to you when all states are available to you to view even before I can begin to complain about them?" He very unashamedly says, "O Lord, I complain to you." At one point he said, "O Lord, I accept everything you give me." But here now he's accepting everything, and yet he is complaining. "I need a friend to complain to. Oh friend, it is very difficult for me what they are doing." He said in yesterday's dua that we were talking about, he said, "Oh Allah, I complain to you the distance between me and my homeland. Oh Allah, I complain to you of what my enemies are doing to me. Oh Lord, the way they have humiliated me." Of course, he did not use those words, but hawan, that's this humble state of mine in front of my enemies. He then speaks with a friend. And Allah becomes that confident of God. Allah becomes that confident friend of Hussain. Hussain knowing that this friend of mine will not judge me. Now, when Allah becomes that proximate to us, what happens is, we begin to free our own selves, because we are in an eternal captivity. We call ourselves free man. There is no freedom here. These are slaves. Nay, they are not slaves of body. These are sleeping people who are not even awake. These are slaves of role play. These are not even awakened people, poor people. It's a state, pitiful state. Everything that is happening in this world, our fight for the haqq. I'm saying, Ali ibn Abi Talib said, "Kalimatul haqq yuradu biha al-batil." The Kharijis speak the truth, but what they intend through it is falsehood. What I'm saying is, the person who speaks the truth, if the truth is not here, that word of truth becomes falsehood. When I want to establish the faith of God, but God is not here, it is nothing but falsehood. It is here that we see what Hussain has taught us. Open up to God. Find yourself. Reveal yourself fully. Once you reveal yourself fully, that is when you begin to emerge in a real life. This is what Hussain teaches us. Here I am, O my Lord. Here I am. I have accepted your decree, but I need you beyond being a God. I need you as a wali of mine. If this thing can be incorporated within our lives, life becomes very, very simple. We say to Allah, "Allah, we know what you're doing is the best, but it is difficult for me. Help me through this. Oh friend, let me talk to you about the decree of Allah." We're talking to Allah about His own decree. "Oh friend, let me talk to you about the decree of God." And the friend will say, "Trust God." But in this case, the friend is saying, "Trust me," because He is God. After we pass through this stage, Hussain arrives at something that is unbeknown to us. within the prophets and the saints to this level, he begins to fall in love with Allah. When he becomes the intimate friend of God, he begins to not only reason with the situation that whatever God does is best, but begins to love God and feels God. How amazing is this? Have you ever seen a person who is torn into pieces, whose throat burns with thirst, but when the blade arrives at his neck, his lips bear a smile? Have you ever seen a person who is so oppressed, and at that point, when the blood has oozed out of his veins, he radiates with the light of God? This is a person who has now fallen in love with Allah. How do we explain this? It is a state within, and that is why the son of Adam stands at ranks beyond the angels. The angels can never comprehend what this son of Adam is. This son of Adam can fall in love with his God and can have himself torn apart, and every drop of blood cries out, "Oh Lord, this chastisement is sweeter than any paradise." Who can explain this thing? We need to experience this. It is like saying to a person, "How do you know the pleasure I feel in the pain that you see?" You know, often the Azad Arif Hussain Salamullah alayhi, they say to people who criticize them that, "How do you know the pleasure of my azadari when you haven't tasted the love of Hussein?" People say, "Well, how can you strike your hand on your chest?" You say, "This striking of my hand, if only you knew how much pleasure it yielded." Look at the pleasure Muslim ibn Awsaja seeks. When Hussein says, "What will you do tomorrow?" Muslim says, "By God, we shall engage with them with our swords, then with our spears. Then shall throw stones at them. Then, if the stones were to finish, we shall engage with them with our bare hands. If our arms are cut, and if our necks are cut, and if after that our bodies are shred into pieces, and if after that we were burned to ashes, and if after that our ashes were scattered, we will yearn from Allah to restore us once again, so that we may die for you time and again." This is the language of love. This is no longer reason. Hussein begins to melt away in his Lord so fully. I do not understand how a person can live beyond the dagger that is in the chest of Akbar. I can't understand. How can a person have resolve beyond the arms of Abbas? But this is Hussein, in love with his God. And this love yields pleasure at every pain that he encounters. He says, "Oh Allah, you are the one who has removed all others from the hearts, so that there is no one else left but you. There is no one worthy of worship in their hearts but you. No one worthy of love in their hearts but you. Oh, one who has become their pleasure and their contentment as opposed to anybody else." We see this state at times coming upon us. When people are in love, terribly in love, when a young man falls in love, observe their state. They are so much in love, so immersed in this divine state. Of course, they are in love with their prospective partners, but they are so immersed in this divine state. Examine that state. In that state, they care not of anything. There is no dignity left in them anymore. There is no prestige left in them anymore. Love is blind. There is no black or white or tall or short or wealthy or poor. A queen falls in love with a sweeper on the road. It doesn't make any difference to her. A princess in love with a poor man. a free person in love with a slave. That love is the one that takes away every pretense, takes away every distinction. It takes away the person from themselves and immerses them in the object of love. We see these states that they eat not, they drink not. You can make them work, they will happily do everything. At that stage, it is that divine touch, that love. So Hussein falls in love with his God to such a deep extent that, oh beloved, he says, your choice comes before mine. Nay, it is you, there is no me left. No, even if there is an iota of me left, O God, tear it away. Let it only be my beloved. Do you not observe his prayer? Before his final battle, he said, Allahumma taraktul khalqa turran fi hawak. O Lord, I have abandoned the creation in your passion. He looks at his children. I have chosen to make them orphans, O Lord, so that I may meet you. He looks at the swords. If they were to shred me into pieces, O Lord, this heart will not yearn other than you. This is that divine stage of love that Hussein begins to encounter in his relationship with his God. That now it is no longer a question of I am nothing in front of you, or that your decree is the best decree, or that friend I need you. It is now a question of nothing but you. It is that stage that I am not, you are. Allow this heart to be torn into pieces so that nothing remains of me, nothing but you are visible through this chest. Where do you think a man gets the resolve to place his chest in front of the shooting arrows as Hussein does? Where do you think a man gets the resolve of fighting, and when they say to him, why do you not submit? He says, by God, you will not find another one like me. By every drop of blood that I have, I shall fight you. Do you know why he wasn't stopping his fight? Not for anything but that he wanted to meet his Lord in such a complete manner. Such a complete manner that nothing of him remains. Only his God remains. So he cries out, Ya ghayat al-talibin, Ya muntaha amal al-rajin. Oh, the peak of those who are yearning. Nothing beyond you can be yearned. Oh, the one who is the utmost that the ones with hope can yearn. Then he says, Ilahi, ma aqrabaka minni wa ba'adani ank. O Lord, how close you are to me and how far I am from you. And it was this love that he had for Hussein, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he wanted to break that distance. And he saw his own being that distance, and hence he gave himself so fully. What he says here is something quite phenomenal. فَمَا الَّذِي يَحْجُبُنِي عَنْكَ. He says, O Lord, how can anything conceal me from you? He was looking into his own self, and at that point he finds this particular state inside him where he begins to find Allah so fully, and he begins to fall in love with Allah. If we can understand this of Imam Hussain salamullah alayhi, then we can forge ourselves a tie with God. And we can try this. We just need to analyze this. Why are we in the turmoil in which we are? Because we have not understood that the only calling, can we say salawat and come forward so there are some people at the back? If we can analyze just a little bit, we will see that all our life is spent in yearning to complete ourselves. Why do you think we want health? Because we find health as a point that completes us. Why do you think we want wealth? Because wealth completes us. It rids us of our insecurities. Why do we find we want friends and acceptance? Why do you think we want validation from others? Why do you think we fall in love with women and with men? I'm not talking about men falling in love with men, yes? I'm getting into a lot of trouble with these sort of loose statements. Salawat. There comes a point in life when you are already in trouble. What difference does it make beyond this? A man who has lost everything can't lose anymore. What difference does it make? And this is the unique point where God frees you fully. When He takes everything away from you, what else do you have to lose? What happens after that? You stand as a free man. This is the journey of Allah. This is the beautiful journey. In any case, what do we yearn? We yearn completion within ourselves. If only we knew that these are aspects of what we are really yearning from within. We don't want to die, do we? Because we see death as a deficiency and as an end. If only we could understand that the treasure of all treasures is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We will not feel security with our business empires anymore. We will feel security with God instead. We want power. If only we understood that the power of all power is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we would not be surrounded by militaries. We want companionship. If only we understood that when you put me to rest in my grave, that none of you will be there. It will be the companion of all companions, Allah. If only we understood that we want beauty unending, and that Allah was that beauty unending. If only we understood things differently, that what we want from within us is the absolute. And that absolute life cannot come but after tasting death. That absolute treasure cannot come but by losing all worldly treasure. That absolute companion cannot come but by the world abandoning us. If only we understood these things, we would be yearning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala differently. We would offer our chests to God as did Hussain ibn Ali. We would become a very different community. We would become community who are godly. Hussain brings that love in us. Honestly, he does. He is a divine agency, and I want to finish this tomorrow. Whoever was touched by Hussain became blind in his love. You find several instances in the story of Ashura that depicts this. You find Habib coming to him. He looks at Hussain. Although I have become old, O Hussain, yet when I glance upon you, youthful blood begins to flow within my veins. We find this in Wahab and his mother. His head is separated from his body, thrown towards the camp of Hussain. She picks it up. In a rage, she throws it back. What I give in the way of Hussain, I do not take back. We find this in John, who throws away his shield and tears his shirt. And they say, "Oh man, have you lost your senses? Indeed, the love of Hussain has made me insane." Face the chest of the lover of Hussain, who comes and offers his heart as a shield against your arrows. Hussain offers that beautiful love. And that is why it is said that this Hussain was necessary for Islam, because Allah knew in His divine wisdom that people will lose sense of God altogether. Do you not see how empty the mosques have become? And do you not see how populated Hussein's mimbar has become? Why? Because Hussein depicts a God that Islam has forgotten. Islam has remembered the God of punishment and reward. Hussein offers the God of love instead. We helplessly fall in love with Hussein ibn Ali. And we are ready to give our all to Hussein ibn Ali. This is why Hussein and the likes of Hussein are kept there. They are not imams. They are the love of our lives. They do not deserve lip service. They deserve every drop of blood in our veins. They do not deserve anything less than the fullest direction within us. And if we can give all of that, then we too begin to relate to Allah in a very similar fashion. So I will say this, that by Allah, if Hussein were to ask for our heads, there would be a smile on our lips when we give them. By God, there is no doubting this. But if Hussein's God were to ask the same, there would be hesitation. And that is the reason why this man is there, to enlighten these beautiful hearts towards him. I ask Hussein though, that your tribulations were great. You were in love with Allah. You gave away everything you had. But Hussein, tell me of those that you leave behind. They are less than you. The tribulations that befall upon you, O Hussein, at the death of your Asghar, brought you to your knees. You were not able to bear the death of your Asghar, Hussein. But you died after that, Hussein. You were killed after that. You were martyred after that. What about the mother of Asghar? She will live with the grief of losing her Hussein and her Asghar. Oh Hussein, do you see the one who is so terribly in love with you, your sister? She does not see beyond you. She is taunting her children, Owen and Muhammad. Why are you still alive? And when you give permission to her, she combs their hair, puts on new clothes, cleanses them. Oh Hussein, look at the mad love she has for you. How will she live after you have gone? Oh Hussein, a thought for them. It is said that Imam Sadiq Salamullah alayhi said that if somebody loses somebody very dear and they do not find any comfort in their heart due to the grief tearing them apart, let them go to the graves of their loved ones and place the palms of their hands upon the dust. That will bring peace to their souls. O Hussein, to whose grave should Zainab and Kulthum go? On the 11th, we see this state. From afar, Kulthum looks at the body of Hussein. As she looks at Hussein's body, inadvertent she cries out, Wa Jadda. Oh grandfather, is this not the same Hussein who rode upon your shoulders? Is he not the same one who you adorned with endless kisses? Oh grandfather, observe how his head has been separated from his body, how the blood oozes from his jugular veins, how the dust blows upon his body. We will say, if this was enough, then even then it would be unbearable. But what can I say, O Hussein, of what happens beyond this? These women are saddled upon camels. In their hands are their children, and at times little babies. 6 to 8 little children were killed beneath the feet of the raging soldiers as they looted the tent. But when the camels were driven at merciless speeds, at times the little children would fall. The mothers would look on, only to see the hooves of camels trample them to death. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. إلهي إنا نسألك بحق الحسين وجده وأبيه وأمه وأخيه وتسعة المعصومين من ذريته وبنيه اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
It's been mentioned a few times that Allah has done us so much favours that it leaves us indebted towards Him. So you said a few times that Imam Hussain felt this feeling of indebtedness. Could it not be argued that the Creator has a duty towards the creation in the same way that you might say a parent has a duty towards a child?
Yes, thank you. The way in which we understand the relationship between God and the creation needs to be revised. You see, if the naive way in which we are taught that God made us and brought us to this world, then God is duty bound to do everything for us and we are not indebted to God. In fact, God is indebted to us for creating us without our consent. It's like a parent saying, or mother saying, I fed you and I clothed you and I washed you. You said to the mother, why did you bring me in this world? If you didn't want to do all of those things, why did you bring me? Can you see that? Why should I feel a sense of indebtedness to you? In fact, you should be indebted to me that without me wanting to, you brought me into this hellhole type of a world. So the relationship is a bit different. The relationship that Allah has with our humankind is the one that Hussein ibn Ali depicts most accurately. That, oh Lord, I wanted the opportunity of life, and that required you to create the heavens and the earth, all the animals and the trees and the plants and the air and the water. And you went out of your way for millions of years of handiwork and you created it all for me. The analogy I give is this between us and Allah. That it's a student who wants to study and get educated and graduate. But the student is in a village and there is no educational establishments. So the student pleads to a very benevolent person. And that person then goes out of their way to create a whole town, places a university therein, creates a library, different faculties, different staff, different professors and lecturers and instructors, then sends the student there, then the student educates his or herself, then graduates. This is the relationship we have with God. Yes? And in the same way, we have forced ourselves upon the womb of the mother that we have chosen. And we have forced ourselves in the lap of a father that we have chosen. And that is why we are always told to acknowledge the debt that we have to a mother and father. Because we chose that route to come through that mother and through that father, and they had to sacrifice their lives to accommodate us in the journey of our life. This is what Hussein teaches us is the most accurate way of understanding the relationship between us and God. Yeah?
Shaykh, I've got a question regarding your advice on speaking to God. If I was to give the example of speaking to a normal human being, if that human being can sense what I'm about to say before even saying it, I wouldn't necessarily then speak, because then I would be speaking for the sake of speaking. So, with regards to Imam Hussein's relationship with God and how I should speak with God, what advice could you give?
We have to explore our individuality and individual relationship with God. Sometimes I need validation. So in order to get that validation, I need to express to my friend as if he is the other, even though he sees. So if God is my friend, but I require validation from Him to accept the act that I have committed, of which I'm not too sure, and it might not even be the right act, but I need God to be there for me to validate me. As we, on many occasions, we do things which are less than right. But we need a friend to validate us for that moment. These are human frailties. So at that point, we forget momentarily that God sees inside me before I speak it. Yes? At that point, we automatically create a distance between us and God. And we say to God, and we are justifying it to God, and God says, fine, it's justified. Once that stage is gone, then God says, now think about it again. Is it justified? But at stages, oh Allah, at this point, the speech has become silent. You see what is in me. You know better than I. You hear me in my silence. At times, what happens is that we say, oh Allah. Can you see that? Even though He sees and feels the but the soul has to give that oh Allah. Oh Allah, who do I have but you? And at times, you say to Allah, oh Allah, these are my children. These are my parents. These are my family. These are my people. These are my community. Save us all. Save us all. You can do that. So we explore our individuality with God. And as with that beautiful relationship that we have with our friend, we will have that relationship with God. Sometimes we speak, sometimes we are silent, sometimes it's inadvertent, sometimes it's well constructed, sometimes it's deceptive, sometimes it's pretentious. But we have to explore all of this variety of relations with God.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Sheikh, could you, my understanding, I hope is wrong, I understood wrong, but before I give chance to somebody else to start to elaborate on it, you mentioned about Imam Hussain began to love his Lord. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yes. What I'm trying to say is, and I know some people can say, well, does that mean he didn't love his Lord? Yes? Now, as we progress in the journey of life, our love for our God deepens. Yes? There is always love of God in which we begin to trust God beyond ourselves. And then God becomes a proximate friend. But there comes a time where we begin to burn in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes? That is the stage that I'm talking about. That stage of burning within Allah. To want to be totally consumed in the fire of this love. So these are different stages. We see the prophets going through this journey. Ibrahim, you are seeing him challenging the idols, getting into a lot of trouble, audaciously breaking the idol, then going into the fire, then being banished. But finally, Ibrahim comes of age, finally. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so nicely constructs the situation where He makes Ismail the object of His love. He actually makes Ibrahim fall in love with Ismail. Do you know why? So that he can break Ibrahim fully and take him back. So he says, now this, the love of your life, give that away to me. So every prophet has also evolved in the love of God. Yes?
Sorry if I step on anyone's toes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
You gave example, describing the relationship between two people who fell in love. Sometimes can be blind love or even sometimes deaf. So, to my understanding, this is maybe different than, the relationship with God, because sometimes, if two people fell in love, blindly, that sometimes can have consequences. And all the gathering, actually, young people here, maybe that's promoting this kind of, criteria it goes the wrong way sometimes. So,
Let me explain. When we fall in love with people, we become like the people we fall in love with. What does that mean? We become as great as the person we fall in love with. Yes? But when we fall in love with God, what do we become? As great as the object of our love, as godly as God. Yes? So when people fall in love with each other, they begin to advocate each other's thoughts, policies, politics, philosophies. They begin to talk like each other, they begin to imitate each other and act like each other. They like the same foods as each other. They like the same entertainment as each other. Imagine if somebody fell in love with Allah. Allah has no limitations, no boundaries. You give him, as Allah says, you give him a gesture, he gives you a kingdom in return. Doesn't that Hadith Qudsi say? That if you come a step to me, I will come running towards you. Yes? He is not like a woman or a man that when we fall in love with, we get bored with afterwards. As soon as we fall in love with God, He expands His mysteries. He is an ocean unending. He is that beauty. If we fall in love with one glimpse, before we become acquainted with that glimpse, He gives us 10 other glimpses. As Hussain says, and we'll discover this tomorrow, that, O Lord, you leave no peace for the hearts in yearning you. As soon as we come to a point of rest, you change it to make the hearts yearn you even further. So when we fall in love with God, we become like God. We become forgiving. We become full of clemency. We become gentle. We become loving. We become confident.